A colonel's journey to lay a brother-in-arms to rest is interrupted by prejudice. The consequences came fast. Don't miss the next chapter. Subscribe today. Where are you watching this from? Tell us in the comments. Marcus Reed stepped out of the taxi, the weight of his mission settling on his shoulders like the medals on his chest. The cacophony of airport life surrounded him. Car engines idling, luggage wheels scraping over concrete, and passengers hustling toward their destinations. It was a bright afternoon, the sun high in the sky, but Marcus's thoughts were far from the light. His gaze dropped to the papers in his hand, the documents for transporting the body of his fallen comrade. The soldier in that coffin wasn't just anyone. Private First Class Thomas Keller had been Marcus's closest friend, a white man who treated Marcus like a brother on and off the battlefield. They'd shared meals, laughs, and the grim reality of combat. And when Keller had been fatally wounded in a surprise attack overseas, Marcus had sworn he would personally escort his friend's body back to his hometown for a proper burial. Nothing was going to stop him from fulfilling that promise. Marcus adjusted his military dress uniform, polished shoes clicking against the pavement as he walked toward the terminal entrance. His medals, hard-earned symbols of valor, reflected the sunlight, but instead of feeling pride, he carried the heaviness of loss. As he reached the entrance, he inhaled deeply, preparing himself for what he hoped would be a smooth journey. Inside the terminal, the environment shifted. Screens displayed flight schedules, and the smell of coffee from nearby kiosks mixed with the scent of jet fuel lingering from the open runway doors. People were in transit, lost in their own worlds. Marcus's uniform turned some heads, but no one stopped to salute or offer words of gratitude. That didn't surprise him. At the check-in counter, a young woman with a tight bun and crisp uniform greeted him with a forced smile. "Ticket and ID, please." Marcus handed over his documents along with his military ID. "I'm here to transport a military casket," he said, his voice low but steady. "Private First Class Thomas Keller. Everything is arranged." The woman scanned the documents, her smile fading. Her eyes flicked up to meet his, suspicious and guarded. "You're the officer in charge?" she asked, as if the idea surprised her. "Yes, I am," Marcus answered, keeping his tone calm. He'd been through this before, the subtle doubt people harbored when they saw a black man in uniform. The woman handed the papers back with a slight frown. "One moment, sir. I need to check something." She leaned toward her colleague, whispering something Marcus couldn't make out, though the tone was unmistakable. Suspicion. Both women glanced at him before one of them picked up the phone, muttering into the receiver. Marcus felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He could tell when someone was fishing for trouble. He'd seen that look enough times in his life to recognize it instantly. Standing tall, he waited, hands clasped behind his back, focusing on the promise he had made to Keller. Minutes stretched. Passengers moved around him, oblivious to the tension brewing at the counter. Eventually, another employee appeared, a middle-aged man with a stiff posture and a scowl. He approached Marcus with an air of authority, looking him up and down. "Colonel Reed, is it?" the man asked, glancing at the papers in Marcus's hand as if expecting them to vanish. "We just need to do a routine verification." Marcus clenched his jaw, holding back the frustration rising inside him. "Everything is in order. All the paperwork is there. I need to board the flight as soon as possible. The family is waiting for the arrival." The man gave him a once-over, his expression flat. "I'm going to need to see that ID again," he said, as if Marcus's uniform and medals weren't enough proof. Marcus complied without a word, retrieving his ID from his pocket. The man took it with deliberate slowness, inspecting it as though it were counterfeit. Every second felt like a slap to Marcus's dignity. After an uncomfortably long pause, the man handed the ID back with a shrug. "It looks fine, but I need to call security. Just a precaution." Marcus's heart sank. "Security? For what?" "Policy," the man said, giving a tight-lipped smile. "We need to ensure everything checks out." Marcus stood his ground, though anger simmered beneath his calm exterior. He could see where this was going. Despite his rank, his medals, and his mission, they saw only one thing: a black man with a claim they found hard to believe. Minutes later, 2 security officers arrived, their body language stiff and unfriendly. One of them, a stocky man with a shaved head, immediately took control. "What's the issue here?" The employee gestured toward Marcus. "This gentleman is claiming to be a colonel escorting a military casket. We need to verify his credentials." The officer gave Marcus a hard look, arms crossed over his chest. "Colonel, huh? I'll need to see your papers." Marcus extended the documents again, keeping his voice even. "All the necessary paperwork is here. This is a transport of military honor." The officer flipped through the documents, his expression unreadable. "Looks official, but we're going to need to take you to secondary screening." "Secondary screening?" Marcus repeated, his tone laced with disbelief. "I have everything in order." The officer didn't flinch. "It's just protocol, sir." Marcus knew better. This wasn't about protocol. It was about control, about reminding him where they thought he stood in the hierarchy. Swallowing his pride, he nodded. "Fine." They led him through the terminal, past curious passengers and murmuring staff, to a small screening room tucked away from public view. The room smelled of stale air and cleaning chemicals. A metal table stood in the center, surrounded by worn chairs. "Place your belongings on the table," one officer instructed. Marcus followed the orders, unclipping his medals and placing them alongside his documents. His heart ached as he laid down the small token Keller's wife had given him, a dog tag engraved with Keller's name and service number. They searched him methodically, their hands cold and indifferent. They even checked the folded flag he carried, as if it might conceal something sinister. When the search was complete, one of the officers gave a curt nod. "You're clear, Colonel." Marcus picked up his things, reattaching the medals to his uniform with slow precision. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of frustration. The officers didn't apologize, nor did they offer an explanation. They simply opened the door, expecting him to leave as if nothing had happened. Marcus straightened his back, slipping Keller's dog tag into his pocket. Without a word, he walked out of the room, the promise to his friend burning brighter than ever in his heart. No matter what obstacles lay ahead, he would get Keller home. As he re-entered the bustling terminal, his eyes scanned the departure board. His flight was delayed. Another obstacle, another test of his patience. But Marcus wasn't going to let anything stop him. With a deep breath, he adjusted his hat and strode toward the gate. The journey was far from over, and he knew the hardest part was still to come. Marcus sat in the waiting area, his back straight despite the exhaustion weighing down on him. His military posture never faltered, even though the frustration inside simmered. The overhead speakers droned flight updates, most of which faded into background noise. But Marcus heard nothing other than the ticking of the clock in his mind. Each second spent in this airport was another moment stolen from his mission to bring Keller home. He pulled out Keller's dog tag from his pocket, running a thumb over the engraved name. The memory of that last conversation with his friend lingered, a reminder of the promise he was determined to keep. No matter how many obstacles they threw in his path, he would fulfill his duty. "Colonel Reed?" The curt voice jolted him from his thoughts. He looked up to see two security guards standing over him. One was a burly man with a shaven head, the other a wiry younger officer who looked eager to prove something. "You're coming with us," the older officer barked. There was no politeness, only an undercurrent of hostility. Marcus stood slowly, maintaining a calm expression. "Is there a problem?" the officer sneered. "Routine procedure, sir, unless you've got a reason to make it difficult." Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but he nodded. He had no time for arguments, not now. "Lead the way." They guided him toward a smaller security room, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly above. Marcus entered the room first, but before he could even turn around, the door shut behind him with a sharp click. "All right, hands on the table," the younger officer ordered, his voice sharper than necessary. Marcus placed his hands flat on the cold metal table. The officers circled him like wolves, their movements deliberate and slow. It wasn't just a search, it was a performance, one meant to humiliate. "Spread your legs," the older guard added. Marcus followed the instructions, his face unreadable, though his fists clenched slightly. They patted him down, paying excessive attention to every fold of his uniform. When they reached his medals, the younger officer snorted, fingering one of the highest distinctions. "So, these make you special, huh?" Marcus didn't respond, meeting the officer's gaze with a cold, unwavering stare. The guard smirked but looked away first, clearly unsettled. "This one thinks he's above the rules," the older guard muttered as he finished the search. Marcus exhaled slowly, keeping his temper in check. He had seen worse on the battlefield. He would not break here. "You resistin', soldier?" the younger guard taunted, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "No," Marcus replied quietly, though the weight of the word carried years of practiced restraint. The guard leaned closer, his breath hot with contempt. "Good, because we can fix that real quick." For a brief moment, Marcus considered his options. He knew they were baiting him, waiting for him to lash out so they could justify escalating things, but he refused to give them that satisfaction. Before anything more could happen, the door swung open abruptly. "Is there a problem here?" A deep, commanding voice filled the room. All heads turned to see an elderly man standing in the doorway. He was dressed in civilian clothes, but there was something unmistakably military in his demeanor. A veteran's bearing, the kind that spoke of battles fought and survived. The older guard stiffened. "This is a security procedure, sir. Nothing to worry about." The veteran's eyes narrowed as he took in the scene, Marcus standing stiffly, the guards looming too close. His gaze sharpened. "That man is Colonel Marcus Reed. I served with him overseas. What's the meaning of this?" The guards exchanged uneasy glances. "You were just harassing a decorated officer," the veteran snapped, cutting them off. "I'll make sure your supervisor hears about this." The tension in the room shifted, and for the first time since entering the airport, Marcus felt a flicker of relief. The veteran stepped forward and gave Marcus a firm handshake. "Good to see you, Colonel. It's been too long." Marcus returned the handshake, his expression softening. "Thank you, I appreciate it." The older guard cleared his throat awkwardly. "You're free to go, sir." Marcus shot him a glance, his face unreadable. He knew an apology wasn't coming, but he didn't need one. Actions spoke louder than words. The veteran gestured toward the door. "Come on, Colonel, let's get out of here." As Marcus left the room, he glanced back briefly at the guards, who stood frozen, realizing they had misjudged the wrong man. Out in the terminal, Marcus and the veteran walked side by side. The veteran gave him a knowing look. "They still don't make it easy for us, do they?" Marcus shook his head, his voice low. "No, they don't." The veteran clapped him on the back. "But you hang in there. Keller's waiting." Marcus's throat tightened, and for a moment he couldn't find the words. He gave the veteran a grateful nod, then continued toward his gate. The journey was far from over, but at least now Marcus had made it through one more obstacle. As he approached the departure area, he caught a glimpse of the flight board. His flight status blinked in bold red letters. Delayed. Marcus closed his eyes briefly, willing himself to stay calm. He had come too far to let anything stop him now. No matter how many roadblocks they put in his way, he would carry Keller home, one step at a time. Marcus stood at the gate, the red letters spelling delayed on the screen gnawing at his patience. He checked the time. Every minute wasted in this airport felt like a personal insult. It wasn't just about him. It was about Keller's family waiting on the other side, holding on to their grief, hoping to bury their son with honor. Marcus adjusted the collar of his uniform and approached the airline desk again, determined to get answers. The attendant at the desk, a young woman scrolling through her tablet, barely acknowledged him. "Yes?" she asked without looking up. "My flight is delayed. I need information," Marcus said evenly, though his frustration threatened to surface. He placed the documents on the counter, careful not to sound confrontational. The woman glanced at him, her expression flat. "Everyone's flight is delayed, sir. You'll just have to wait like everyone else." Marcus exhaled slowly, the knot in his chest tightening. "This isn't just any flight. I'm transporting a military casket. There are specific protocols. Can you at least confirm the new departure time?" The attendant shrugged, scrolling through the screen lazily. "Look, I don't have anything new yet. Check back later." Her dismissive tone stung, but Marcus remained composed. "I need to ensure the casket is properly transferred. This isn't negotiable." With an exaggerated sigh, she finally made eye contact, irritation flickering in her gaze. "Sir, I understand that you think your situation is special, but we're short-staffed. Maybe check with the cargo team if it's that important." Marcus's patience thinned. His pulse quickened, but he kept his voice measured. "Give me the number for the cargo team." The woman tapped a few buttons, scrawled a number on a sticky note, and slid it across the counter. "There. Have a good day." Her sarcasm was thinly veiled. Marcus tucked the note into his pocket and turned toward the nearest phone station. As he dialed the number for cargo services, a memory surfaced unbidden. A moment on the battlefield when Keller had taken a bullet meant for him. Keller's voice echoed in his mind. "Get me home if anything happens, Marcus. Promise me that." He had promised, and no amount of bureaucratic nonsense would stop him now. The cargo team, however, proved to be just as unhelpful as the airline staff. Yeah, we know about the military transport," the voice on the other end of the line grumbled, "but it's a busy day down here. We'll get to it when we get to it." Marcus gripped the receiver tighter. "This isn't acceptable. I need confirmation that the casket is handled with care and transferred properly." "Look, man," the cargo worker said, clearly annoyed, "unless you want to come down here yourself, there's nothing more I can tell you." Marcus closed his eyes, summoning every ounce of patience he had left. "Then tell me how to get to the cargo area." After a moment of silence, the worker begrudgingly gave him the directions. Marcus hung up the phone and strode towards the restricted section of the airport. He wasn't waiting for anyone's permission. He would see this through himself. At the entrance to the cargo area, a security guard blocked his path. "You can't be here," the guard said, folding his arms. Marcus showed his identification and explained the situation. "I'm here for a military casket. I need to ensure it's being properly transferred." The guard barely glanced at the ID. "Rules are rules. You can't just waltz in." Marcus clenched his jaw. "I have authorization. This is not optional." The guard leaned in, a sneer curling his lip. "Maybe next time, bring someone who looks the part." Marcus's blood ran cold at the blatant insult, but he didn't flinch. "Get your supervisor, now." The guard gave him a long, hard look, clearly debating whether to escalate the situation further. After a tense pause, he muttered under his breath and made a call on his radio. "Got someone here who thinks he's important." Marcus waited, his fists clenched at his sides. Keller's dog tag in his pocket felt heavier by the second, as if urging him to keep moving forward no matter what. The supervisor arrived after several agonizing minutes. He was an older man with tired eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "What's the issue?" Marcus explained the situation again, this time laying out every detail with military precision. The supervisor listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When Marcus finished, the man gave a slow nod. "All right, I'll let you through, but I can't have you disrupting our operations." "I'll stay out of your way," Marcus assured him. "I just need to confirm everything is in order." The supervisor unlocked the gate, and Marcus stepped into the bustling cargo area. The sound of forklifts and the hum of machinery filled the space. He spotted Keller's casket, draped in an American flag, resting on a steel platform. Relief washed over him, but it was short-lived. A worker nearby was loudly complaining to his colleague. "Can't believe we have to haul this thing around like it's something special. Just another piece of cargo, if you ask me." Marcus's hands curled into fists, but he took a steadying breath. Confronting them wouldn't serve Keller's memory. Instead, he walked toward the casket, straightening the edges of the flag with deliberate care. He whispered under his breath, "I've got you, brother. Almost there." The moment felt sacred, but it was interrupted by the sharp voice of another employee. "Hey, you can't touch that." Marcus turned, meeting the man's gaze without fear. "I'm Colonel Marcus Reed. This is my mission. Do you have a problem with that?" The man opened his mouth to argue, but closed it again when he saw the fire in Marcus's eyes. He muttered something under his breath and walked away, leaving Marcus alone with the casket once more. With the cargo properly secured and the necessary forms double-checked, Marcus made his way back to the terminal. His phone buzzed as he reached the gate, a message from the airline informing him that the flight was further delayed. Marcus exhaled through his nose, frustration bubbling to the surface. As he sat down, the weight of the day pressed heavily on his shoulders. The obstacles were piling up one after another, testing his patience and resolve. But he reminded himself that this wasn't just about the journey. It was about the promise he made. A promise he would keep, no matter the cost. Marcus leaned back in the chair, glancing at the flashing "delayed" sign once more. The world could throw all the roadblocks it wanted. He wasn't stopping, not now, not ever. The airport terminal buzzed with restless energy as the hours dragged on. Delayed flights turned the waiting areas into makeshift camps, with passengers sprawled across chairs and floors, frustration simmering in the air. Marcus sat quietly, hands folded on his lap, his mind a battleground of exhaustion and determination. Every glance at the departure board tightened the knot in his chest. His mission, to deliver Keller home, felt like an uphill climb through layers of systemic disrespect and careless indifference. Just as Marcus thought he could catch a moment of peace, the silence around him was shattered by a commotion from behind. A group of passengers had gathered near the airline desk, murmuring and gesturing toward him. Phones were out, recording. At first, Marcus didn't react. He had been the subject of unwanted attention before. A man in uniform always stood out in public. But this time, something felt different. "Is that the guy they were hassling earlier?" Someone whispered loud enough for Marcus to hear. "A colonel, right? They dragged him off like a criminal." One by one, passengers began whispering, phones raised to capture the supposed scandal. A man nearby, a middle-aged traveler with a sleek tablet, stepped forward and said, "Hey, sir, you okay? We saw what happened back there with security." Marcus gave a curt nod. "I'm fine, thank you." "You don't look fine," the man replied, his eyes narrowing. "They treated you like a suspect, not a soldier. That's not right." Before Marcus could respond, another passenger chimed in. "I got it all on video. They had no reason to search you like that." Marcus shifted uncomfortably as more voices joined the conversation. Phones pointed at him from every angle, capturing his expression. He wanted to keep things under control, but the narrative was slipping away from him. Someone in the crowd muttered, "If they can do that to a decorated officer, what chance do the rest of us have?" A spark ignited. The murmurs grew louder, frustration building into something volatile. By the time Marcus reached the gate again, the airport's social media was already buzzing with hashtags and outrage. Clips of his encounter with security were spreading fast. The videos, shot from multiple angles, showed him standing stoically as guards searched him with unnecessary force, their behavior drenched in disrespect. Marcus's phone vibrated repeatedly with notifications. Messages poured in from strangers expressing their disgust at how he had been treated. The situation was spiraling out of control, and Marcus knew it would only be a matter of time before journalists arrived. He wasn't wrong. Within the hour, a small group of reporters appeared, armed with cameras and microphones. They swarmed him as he waited at the gate, their questions sharp and relentless. "Colonel Reed, can you comment on the treatment you received from airport security? Do you believe this incident reflects a larger issue of discrimination against black servicemen? What message do you think this sends to other military personnel of color?" Marcus kept his expression neutral, though his pulse raced. He knew the media could twist words, and anything he said now could escalate the situation further. "I have no comment," he said calmly, folding his arms. "Colonel, please," a reporter pressed, shoving a microphone closer to his face. "The public wants to know. What do you have to say about this?" Marcus exhaled slowly, fighting the urge to engage. "No comment," he repeated. But the reporters didn't back down. Another journalist, a woman with a determined expression, asked, "How do you feel knowing the airport staff treated you this way while you were on a mission to transport your friend's remains?" That question cut deep. The emotions Marcus had kept bottled up for hours threatened to spill over, but he clenched his jaw, refusing to let them see it. "No comment," he said one last time, his voice steady but cold. While Marcus tried to distance himself from the media circus, the situation continued to unfold online. The clips of his mistreatment went viral, with hashtags like #RespectOurHeroes and #JusticeForColonel trending within hours. Thousands of comments flooded social media, denouncing the airport's behavior and calling for accountability. Protests began to form outside the airport as news of the incident spread. Crowds of people, holding signs that read, "Honor all soldiers" and "Equal treatment now," gathered at the terminal entrance. The protest grew quickly, fueled by outrage over both the racial profiling and the disrespect toward a war hero. The chant, "Respect our soldiers," echoed through the airport walls, rattling the very structure of the institution that had wronged Marcus. Inside, airline staff and security grew visibly nervous. Management scrambled to contain the situation, but the crowd outside only grew louder, the pressure mounting. One of the reporters at the gate, sensing an opportunity, followed Marcus persistently. "Colonel, do you think the protest outside is justified? Do you believe this incident reflects systemic racism?" Marcus gave the journalist a sidelong glance. He knew the power of words, especially when they left his mouth. Any statement could become fuel for the fire. "I'm just here to bring my friend home," Marcus said quietly. "That's all." His answer was simple, but the look in his eyes told a deeper story. A story of frustration, injustice, and unwavering resolve. Meanwhile, airport executives held an emergency meeting behind closed doors, desperately trying to find a way to manage the fallout. Passengers were restless, flights delayed further, and the protesters outside showed no signs of leaving. A growing sense of panic spread among the staff as videos continued circulating online, tarnishing the airport's reputation with every retweet. Management finally decided to release a generic public statement. "We are reviewing the events involving Colonel Reed and will ensure that all military personnel are treated with the utmost respect." But it was too little, too late. The public wasn't satisfied with empty words. They demanded real accountability. Back at the gate, Marcus sat in silence, watching the chaos around him unfold. The world had turned his personal mission into a public spectacle. Yet, all he wanted was to get Keller home. As reporters hovered nearby, waiting for more sound bites, Marcus leaned back in his chair, exhausted but unyielding. The fight wasn't over, but he was prepared to see it through. No matter how long it took, no matter how many obstacles were thrown in his path, he would carry Keller home, with dignity, with honor, and with the unwavering determination of a soldier who never backed down. The crowd outside the airport grew louder, their chants resonating through the terminal walls. Passengers pressed their faces against the windows to watch the growing protest. The demand for justice echoed through signs, voices, and online posts, painting Marcus Reed not only as a victim of discrimination, but as a symbol of a deeper, festering issue. Yet, despite the noise, Marcus sat in silence near the gate, determined to stay focused on his mission. His calm exterior masked the storm brewing inside him. Then, just as things seemed to spiral beyond control, a ripple of change began to take shape. Marcus's phone buzzed. He checked the screen, an incoming call from someone unexpected. Colonel Reed. The voice on the other end was deep, authoritative. "This is General Adams. I heard about the situation at the airport." Marcus sat up straighter. General Adams was a high-ranking officer known for his no-nonsense leadership and fierce loyalty to his men. Marcus had served under him briefly during a joint operation years ago. "General," Marcus said. "Yes, sir, it's been complicated." "I can imagine," Adams replied grimly. "We're not going to let this slide. I'm pulling some strings. Give me a little time." Minutes after the call ended, the airport staff began scrambling. Word had come down from high places, and now the tone toward Marcus shifted. Airline representatives approached him, offering apologies that felt hollow. "Colonel Reed," one of the attendants stammered nervously, "we deeply regret the inconvenience. Please allow us to upgrade your flight and offer you complimentary access to our VIP lounge." Marcus met the man's gaze, his expression unreadable. "I don't need an upgrade. I need my flight and the casket to depart on time." The attendant hesitated, clearly caught off guard by Marcus's refusal. "Of course, sir. We're doing everything we can to expedite the process." Marcus gave a curt nod. He wasn't here for apologies or upgrades. He was here to honor a promise. As the airport management scrambled to mitigate the damage, more allies began to emerge. One of them was a senior officer from Marcus's old unit, Lieutenant Colonel Foster. Foster was an older man with silver hair and a commanding presence. Though he had retired from active service, Foster still carried the respect of the military community and wielded influence in the upper ranks. When Foster arrived at the airport, it was like a shift in the atmosphere. He strode toward Marcus with purpose, his sharp eyes taking in everything at a glance. "Marcus," Foster said, clapping him on the shoulder, "heard they were giving you trouble." Marcus gave a faint smile. "It's been a day." Foster shook his head, a flicker of anger in his eyes. "Unbelievable. A decorated officer on an honorable mission, and this is how they treat you." He turned toward the airline staff lingering nearby. "You'll regret every second of this when we're done." The staff backed away nervously under Foster's stern gaze. He then pulled out his phone and began making calls, rallying other officers and officials to apply pressure on the airport management. Meanwhile, Marcus received a text message from General Adams. "I've contacted the airline's CEO. They're fast-tracking your flight. Hang tight. We've got your 6. Though Marcus appreciated the support, he knew that his focus had to remain steady. He wouldn't rest until Keller was home. A few minutes later, another unexpected figure approached Marcus. It was a representative from the airline's corporate office, his face pale with nerves. "Colonel Reed," the man began with a forced smile, "we want to sincerely apologize for the treatment you've endured. This is not how we conduct business, and we deeply regret any offense caused." Marcus's gaze remained steady, his silence heavy with meaning. The man shifted uncomfortably under the weight of it. "We've arranged for everything," the representative continued. "The flight is ready for priority boarding, and the casket will be handled with the utmost care. We'd like to offer you our deepest apologies and hope you'll accept our gesture of goodwill." Marcus gave a slow nod. "All I want is to get my friend home," he said quietly. "That's it." The representative exhaled, relieved that Marcus wasn't escalating the confrontation. "Of course, Colonel, the flight crew is standing by and will ensure everything goes smoothly from here." As Marcus stood, Foster gave him a knowing look. "They're scrambling now, but you made your point. You've got people watching your back." Marcus gave a faint smile. "I didn't ask for all this." "I know," Foster said, "but sometimes the right battles find you." Marcus nodded. He had learned long ago that not every fight was fought on the battlefield. Some battles came when you least expected them, and victory was measured not by medals, but by honor. As they made their way to the gate, Marcus caught sight of the protesters outside through the large airport windows. People held signs, chanted slogans, and demanded accountability. For a brief moment, Marcus felt a flicker of something bittersweet, gratitude for their support, but sadness that this battle even needed to be fought. He turned toward the gate agent, who offered a nervous smile. "The flight is ready when you are, Colonel." Marcus nodded once. "Let's get moving." With Foster walking beside him and the weight of Keller's memory guiding him, Marcus stepped forward, one step closer to home, one step closer to honoring a promise. The plane touched down on the tarmac of Keller's hometown, just as the first light of dawn painted the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. Marcus Reed stared out the window, the exhaustion weighing on him, though his posture remained disciplined. His thoughts were fixed on the solemn task ahead. He had made it through the endless delays, confrontations, and public spectacle. Now, the final step awaited, delivering his friend to the family and giving Keller the farewell he deserved. The flight crew treated him with deference, but Marcus was too focused to care. As soon as the plane came to a halt, the casket was carefully unloaded and transferred onto a waiting military transport vehicle. Marcus stood on the runway, straightening the flag draped across the casket one last time. His fingers ran along the fabric, smoothing every crease. "We're here, brother," he whispered. "We made it." At the gates of the small-town cemetery, Keller's family awaited, their faces heavy with grief. His mother stood at the front, clutching a worn photograph of her son in uniform. The sight was enough to break even the strongest heart, but Marcus held his emotions in check. His duty now was to honor Keller, just as he had promised. Keller's father, an older man with silver hair and tired eyes, approached Marcus and extended a hand. "Colonel Reed," he said, his voice trembling, "thank you for bringing him home." Marcus shook the man's hand firmly but gently. "It was my honor, sir. He was my brother in every way that mattered." Mrs. Keller, tears streaming down her face, stepped forward next. "He always spoke so highly of you," she whispered. "He said if anything ever happened to him, you'd bring him back." Marcus swallowed hard, the knot in his throat almost unbearable. "I promised him, ma'am, and I never break my promises." The family nodded, gratitude mixed with sorrow in their expressions. They gestured towards the procession that was ready to move toward the burial site. The cemetery was quiet, the air heavy with reverence. Rows of American flags lined the path leading to the plot reserved for Keller. Soldiers in dress uniforms stood at attention, rifles slung over their shoulders. Local residents had gathered as well, some holding flags, others wiping away tears. Word had spread about Marcus's journey and the obstacles he had faced along the way. The community had come together not only to honor Keller, but also to express their gratitude for Marcus's dedication and sacrifice. As the casket was carried toward the gravesite, the somber notes of taps filled the air, played by a lone bugler. The mournful melody echoed through the trees, a final farewell to a soldier who had given everything for his country. Marcus stood at attention beside the casket, his hand raised in a crisp salute. Every movement was precise, every gesture deliberate. This was not just a routine ceremony. It was a personal goodbye to a friend, a brother in arms. When the casket was lowered into the ground, Marcus remained standing, the weight of his promise settling deep within him. He knew that bringing Keller home was only part of the journey. Now came the hardest part, letting go. As the ceremony drew to a close, Marcus stepped forward to deliver a final message. His voice was low and steady, though each word carried the weight of memories, battles, and loss. "Thomas Keller was more than just a soldier," Marcus began. "He was a friend, a brother, and a man of honor. On the battlefield, we relied on each other in ways that only soldiers can understand. He saved my life more times than I can count. And when he fell, I promised I would bring him home. Today, I keep that promise." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the gathered crowd. Keller didn't care about the color of my skin or the stripes on my uniform. He cared about the man standing beside him. And that's the way it should always be. There was a moment of silence, the only sound the rustling of leaves in the breeze. Marcus lowered his hand from his salute and took a step back, allowing Keller's family to place flowers on the casket. As the family and community members began to disperse, several townspeople approached Marcus to express their gratitude. Many had heard about the ordeal he had faced at the airport and were appalled by the disrespect shown to a man of his stature. "We won't forget what they did to you," one man said. "It's not right, and we'll make sure something changes." Another woman, wiping tears from her eyes, added, "You brought him home, Colonel. That means everything to us." Marcus gave them a nod, his expression somber but grateful. It wasn't the recognition he had sought, but it was a reminder that the fight for respect was far from over. Later that evening, Marcus joined Keller's family at a small gathering in their home. It was a quiet affair, just close friends and family reminiscing about the man Keller had been. They shared stories, laughed through tears, and found comfort in each other's presence. Keller's mother pulled Marcus aside at one point, pressing a folded letter into his hand. "Tom wrote this for you before he left," she whispered. "He wanted you to have it in case, well, you know." Marcus unfolded the letter with trembling hands. It was short but meaningful, written in Keller's familiar scrawl. "Marcus, if you're reading this, it means you kept your promise. Thank you for getting me home, brother. I'll see you on the other side." The words hit Marcus harder than any battlefield wound. He folded the letter carefully and placed it in his pocket, alongside Keller's dog tag. "I'll see you on the other side," Marcus whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The night ended with a quiet toast in Keller's memory. As Marcus raised his glass, he knew that, despite the obstacles and the injustices he had faced, he had done what he set out to do. He had brought his brother home, and in doing so, he had found a measure of peace. The next morning, Marcus woke early, the first rays of sunlight streaming through the window of the small guest room where he had stayed. His body was weary, but his mind was sharp. Keller was home. The mission was complete, but the events that had unfolded at the airport still weighed heavily on him. He knew that what happened wasn't just a series of unfortunate events. It was a reflection of something far deeper, a system that treated men like him with suspicion, even when they wore the uniform of their country. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed for a long moment, staring at Keller's dog tag in his hand. The fight wasn't over. Not yet. Keller's burial had been a personal victory, but what he experienced at the airport demanded something more. It was time to act. Later that morning, Marcus's phone buzzed with a series of messages and missed calls. News of the airport incident had continued to spread. Media outlets were picking up the story, and the protests that began outside the airport were now gaining national attention. Activists demanded answers, and the public's outrage grew louder by the hour. To Marcus's surprise, his inbox was flooded with messages from military personnel, soldiers, officers, and veterans of all races. Some expressed their disgust at how Marcus had been treated, while others shared their own experiences with discrimination within the ranks. It was clear to Marcus that this wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a much larger problem. A message from General Adams appeared at the top of his inbox. "We're launching an official inquiry. This will not be swept under the rug." Marcus exhaled slowly, knowing that while inquiries and investigations were important, they were only the beginning. He wasn't content with waiting for others to take action. He needed to do more. Back in Keller's hometown, Marcus met with local veterans and community leaders. Many of them expressed their desire to help, and together they began organizing a campaign, not just for justice for Marcus, but for systemic changes to ensure that no other soldier would face what he had. "We need accountability," Marcus said during one of their meetings, "not just from the airport staff, but from the military itself. This isn't just about me, it's about every soldier who's been disrespected and disregarded because of how they look." The campaign quickly gained momentum. With the support of military organizations, activists, and media outlets, Marcus's story became a rallying cry. Social media movements like #JusticeForReed and #RespectAllSoldiers trended nationwide. Public figures began weighing in, and demands for reform echoed across the country. Meanwhile, the airport launched an internal investigation. Several employees were placed on leave, and the head of airport security was forced to resign. The airline issued a public apology, though many criticized it as being too little, too late. Marcus received a personal letter from the airline's CEO apologizing for the mistreatment and promising to implement new policies to prevent similar incidents in the future. It was a small step, but Marcus knew it wasn't enough. The military also responded to the growing outcry. General Adams publicly acknowledged the need for change and announced new training programs aimed at addressing racial bias within the ranks. Marcus was invited to participate in the initiative, lending his voice to the effort to reshape the culture of the military from within. "It's not going to be easy," Adams told Marcus during one of their conversations, "but it's necessary, and we need people like you leading the charge." Marcus nodded. "I've faced tougher battles." Adams smiled. "That's what I was counting on." As the weeks passed, Marcus's life slowly returned to a new normal. The campaign for justice continued to gain traction, and meaningful changes began to take shape in both the airport and the military. Marcus knew that the fight wasn't over, but for the first time he felt that progress was within reach. Then, one morning, a letter arrived at Marcus's doorstep. It was from Keller's family. Mrs. Keller's handwriting was neat and deliberate, the words filled with warmth and gratitude. "Marcus, thank you for bringing our boy home. Your dedication meant the world to us. But more than that, thank you for standing up when it would have been easier to stay silent. Tom would be proud of you. We all are." Marcus read the letter twice, his heart heavy with emotion. He folded it carefully and placed it alongside Keller's dog tag, a reminder of the bond they had shared and the promise he had kept. In the quiet moments that followed, Marcus reflected on everything that had transpired. The road had been long and filled with obstacles, but he had carried Keller home with honor. Along the way, he had faced prejudice, injustice, and unnecessary challenges. But he had also found allies, unexpected supporters, and the strength to push forward. And though Keller's chapter had ended, Marcus knew that his own story was far from over. The fight for justice would continue, for himself, for Keller, and for every soldier who had ever been judged by the color of their skin rather than the content of their character. Marcus stood by the window, gazing out at the horizon. A new day was dawning, full of challenges yet to come. But Marcus was ready. He had kept his promise, and he would keep fighting for what was right. With Keller's dog tag still in his hand, Marcus whispered quietly to himself, "We're not done yet, brother. not by a long shot. And with that, he stepped forward, ready to meet whatever battles lay ahead, not as a victim, but as a soldier, a brother, and a man of unbreakable resolve. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay with us for the next one. And while you're here, check out our other videos. There's always more to explore. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below.